Hayward Heath. It's a place that's near enough that people can go to London, but not so close that it's really expensive. It's a kind of holding pen for London workers.
Kids just sit hanging round the street and they've got somebody else's clothes on. Jumble sail dice, oil in the bag. Says some things that I can't repeat and he swears I'll be saved for high.
I remember Matt was doing German and you're doing politics and sociology or something, weren't you?
I did politics, sociology.
Economics?
Yeah.
There you go. What was I doing then?
I've no idea. Geography?
What? Geography? Do I look like a geographer?
No. You know what? I haven't got the slightest idea.
I can't believe how rude that is, can you? It's just awful.
What were you studying?
I was doing maths, physics and chemistry.
I'm really glad I didn't know that, actually. I think if I'd known that, it's quite possible.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't have talked to me.
We never would have
I was
formed,
just too square.
I saw Brett playing Beatles songs and kind of going up to him and asking him if he wanted to be in a band. You didn't really need much more than that back then, did you?
No.
I mean, I couldn't play anything. This is the thing. I was inviting all these people to join my band. And
it's a way of making friends, isn't it, I suppose? You're sort of looking for friends, but you don't have the sort of social skills to go up to them and start talking to them about kind of what happened last night in EastEnders or something.
Whenever I read about the band names, they always talk about they were briefly apparently called Jeff and Suave and Elegant. The one I remember is Painted Black. That's who they were, and that's you know, when the demo started coming out and the song started coming out. Jeff might be one of those showbiz things where they call themselves Jeff for half a day, but it sounds much better in an interview.
Well, to be honest, some crimes were committed.
Were committed.
Crimes against music, because what we sounded like back then, I can't really imagine.
Oh, God.
Because we didn't have a drummer.
I'm really glad that there's no recordings of it, actually, because...
There's one song I can remember really clearly, but just because it was years later that I realised it was Patti Smith's Dancing Barefoot.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? It was a song called She's the Knife that our then singer Gareth wrote.
Yeah, he plundered it. Gareth wasn't in the band when we first met, was he? Who sung? Did anyone sing?
I don't think anyone did.
No, we just played some chords, didn't we?
Just played
it was just like literally just me and you. Was there anyone? Who else was there?
Nick Graham.
Oh, yeah.
Was he then there? He was probably playing a bit of guitar. He might have sung as well.
Yeah.
The idea of a band when you're kind of 16, 17, you come from a place like this, it's not just about playing music, is it? It's about the idea of the band. There were certain musicians who I liked the way they saw the world. I was always looking for people who saw the world that way.
Yeah.
Take their kind of life choices from the bass player in Echo and the Bunnymen. But I did.
Matt was always super cool with music. I was always interested in music, but it's not my passion. It really was with him, so you could tell that. You know, he loved Bowie and he loved Blondie earlier than that. Then he had like a goth phase, so there was Sisters of Mercy and The Cure. And then I remember, when it was like suddenly the first Jesus and Mary Chain single coming home, and Primal Scream and all this kind of stuff that even I could work out wasn't in the charts and, you know, wasn't something in the mainstream. I could work out that something cool was happening.
This is when I first became aware of alternative music. You know, I love the Pistols when I was at school, and I love Bowie and those sorts of things. And when I came here, I remember kind of being very conscious of the Smiths, the Cult, Lloyd Cole. There was a sort of bookish, intellectual element to it
kind
as well.
Kind of un-rock thing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
In fact, it was a rejection of rock conventions in lots of ways, wasn't it?
It felt almost like a world that you could be part of.
They sort of seemed to speak about what was going on, didn't they?
Yeah.
And I think people like the Smiths and Lloyd Cole, those kind of people, there was a definite attempt to sort of sing about the drudgery of life.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a really exciting time, you know, in 84, 85, when that whole alternative world was bubbling away. And I remember being very conscious of it here.
She walks the streets of summer. Inside her there's no future. She walks the streets to find
I've always had this sense, being in Suede, and life as well, and being, just being me, I've always sensed this sort of peering in, or my face pressed up against the window. And I don't know if I'd have had that frustration if I'd have been born in the centre of things.
I think there was a sense of kind of like looking at people's lives. I'm thinking even then you did tend to write about characters, about little vignettes about people.
She takes the blame, takes the pain.
Remember cycling down here?
Where did you cycle? I never remember you cycling.
Yeah, I had a bike for my paper round. I had a bike. I had a purple bike.
So that window there, that room, that's where I was born. I was born in the same room that my dad died in.
Wow.
In that room there. All these hedges just used to be sort of like chain link fences, because the estate was built when I was born, 66, 67. I've got some pictures of me and my sister and my mum there. My memory of this place from when I was a child was that it was full of other children, because all the families that moved in here were families with kids of my age. But whenever I came back here when my dad was still alive, that's the thing that I noticed, there just weren't any kids anymore. And it was almost like this sort of weird ghostliness to this area that I remember as being a playground. There would be kids playing football there, there'd be kids on bikes and stuff like that. And there was a sort of a weird absence. And it's almost as if the generation of children had grown up and moved on and just left the parents sort of like aging and decaying on this estate,
I remember turning up here and I used to be able to see your dad through that front window.
Because that's where he used to air conduct, in that room there. You'd be able to hear Liszt, because he played it so loud.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of like, you could hear it down the road. You'd be able to hear Liszt and Wagner and Elgar really loud, and you could probably see him in there air conducting with his baton.
Where did he get his baton from?
I don't know, but it was a proper there was some sort of, it's a proper thing that conductors had.
It wasn't a toy baton. It was
a conductor's baton, but he'd be in there conducting. It's really changed since I came here last. Even I came here last 13 years ago, I think, when my dad died. There, where there's this pretty little path now, there used to be a big, ugly, corrugated iron gate thing, big thing with like barbed wire on the top, and that's where we used to play football. It used to be the goal. It had kind of graffiti on it and stuff. And I think they've turned all this into a nature reserve now.
Didn't you go foraging for mushrooms out there?
Not really mushrooms there. There used to be a bottle dump there. There was a Victorian bottle dump. We used to kind of go looking for old bottles.
That's right, with the
We used to
little
sell.
stoppers.
There's an antique shop up the road. We used to go and sell them up the road.
Yeah.
Make some money. It's definitely not as bleak as I remember it. It looks kind of leafier and prettier and nicer. This house is sort of indicative of my upbringing in lots of ways. What you can't see is right up there, there's a really pretty village called Linfield. And this is a sort of weird little sort of estate on the edge of it. And so I never felt like I fitted into any social group. I didn't feel like I was part of the sort of middle class that my parents' values aspired to, covertly, I think. And I certainly didn't feel like I was part of the sort of community here, because we were always sort of seen as the outsiders here. My dad played classical music, my mum was an artist and used to sunbathe naked in the garden and stuff like that. So she was kind of quite bohemian and he was kind of quite an eccentric, my dad. Yeah, my mum was more sort of passive and, was in the background, but I think there was a steeliness to her that was a really good quality, a flintiness that she had. She never gave up. She'd go and pick mushrooms to make into soups, and she'd go and pick nettles to make into salads, and she'd pluck dead birds and all these sorts of things. She was always sort of sitting there painting and listening to the radio, fixing things, mending things. She's always sewing, because that's